In our last episode, The Economic Change, Growth of Capitalism and Big Business, we learned that because of free availability of critical resources, the United States could switch from agricultural revolution to industrial revolution. The great inventions and inventive genius of America facilitated conversion of raw materials into industrial goods. Big business houses started making their appearance in the wake of industrialization. Among them were a few entrepreneurs who had monopolistic mindset, made most of the opportunity, formed trusts, and gradually built up what can be called big business empires. Though the laborers played an important part in bringing about the Industrial Revolution, they were denied the fruits of the Industrial Revolution. This led the laborers to seek their rights through the labor movements and unions. The labor movement in America was unique in nature. It veered away from classical Marxism espoused in the labor movements of other countries, especially in Europe. It is in the logic of the labor movement in the United States that we have to look in order to explain its uniqueness. Professor Chittabrata Palit discusses the most important factors responsible for the beginning of the labor movement in the United States.
In the beginning, flush of their success, many of the American capitalists who were also trust builders and billionaires, they turned very selfish. They only maximized their profits and minimized the labor cost. And that really created some kind of deprivation of the labor. The owners of industries, the capitalists, they want to put hours of work at the maximum. If possible, to force the worker, if he is not organized, to work till 10 to 12 hours. And the other thing, minimum wages. So wages were always kept below the belt. Very low wages were offered. Plus, women and children were also employed. And there was a veritable movement over them. Now, women's labor, we all know, was half the man's wages. And children got only 1/4 of man's wages, which were very low. But they were worked to the full brim. It's not that they were worked for less hours. They were also worked for 10 to 12 hours, but their wages were given at that rate, half for women and 1/4 for labor. These were some of the basic things, plus the working condition was appalling. Most of the laborers were put into ghettos and slums, and they didn't have the minimum living standards. So in United States also, the deprivation and discrimination was rampant. In the early phase, they were absolutely unchallenged. The labor was not organized. Unless the labor was organized, there would be no challenge to the capitalists. So they would like to maximize profit. They always try, capitalists always try to maximize their profit and minimize their labor costs. Capitalism or capitalists are very selfish. They never think of the country, never think of the poorer people. They only maximize their profit. But in America, we also have some of the capitalists who had also been very liberal. We have this Cooper, who was an industrialist but at the same time a philanthropist. Carnegie, similar. Ford, also similar, who had both these aspects. They were great captains in industry, at the same time good human beings. Morgans were not like that. They were, hard bargainers with labor. They never would yield of anything to the labor.
So, out of these labor conflicts emerged the labor union or labor organization. The National Labour Union was the first attempt to unite all trade unions into one federation, with an ultimate aim of changing the American political and economic systems. It started at a conference in Baltimore in 1866, but disbanded in 1872 because of internal strife. It was succeeded by the Knights of Labour, founded in Philadelphia in 1869 by Uriah H. Stevens and 6 other tailors. Workers in all trades except doctors prior to 1881, lawyers, bankers, professional gamblers or stockholders, and liquor dealers were eligible for membership. It was initially structured along the lines of a secret society in order to protect its members from company thugs. The Knights demanded an end to child and convict labor, an 8-hour workday, equal pay for women, a progressive income tax, better wages, and the cooperative ownership of mines and factories. The transition of the Knights from a secret organization to a major labor union started with the election of Terence Powderly in 1879. Powderly managed to convince the General Assembly to make its name and objects public in 1881, and the Knights grew quickly after this. By 1886, membership had reached over 1 million. It adopted a policy of militant action against employers and played an important part in the strikes by coal miners and railway workers in 1877.
So why did the Knights of Order not go in for any class struggle?
Yeah, that is because, the whatever points of conflict we may harp on, still it was, after all, a land of opportunity, and the wage index and other indices in the United States are much higher than in the rest of the world. So that is one reason why there was no class struggle, no formation of class at all. This was there. And then this periodic wave of immigrants coming and depressing the formation of class. Class was not formed, because before the class could be formed, another wave of people would come who would be ready to work for less wages. So in this way, class formation was not possible at the stage of the first formation of the noble order of the Knights of Labour. That's why I said it's more or less a social organization. To break down the isolation of the laborers, to unite them, put them under some kind of a communication network. So that was the main purpose. And for this reason, therefore, they didn't go in for any kind of class formation or class struggle. Class struggle, as you know, means that ultimately they want ownership of the means of production by the laboring classes, dictatorship of the proletariat. But that kind of situation did not arrive here. However we might condemn capitalists, still American capitalists at this stage were much more liberal than in the rest of the world. Because others were very ancient societies and they were very rigid at the same time. Their opportunities are also less. Therefore people are migrating. If you talk of British industries or German industries, there already class polarization had taken place, deprivation had taken place. And therefore, because of the rigidity, people had crossed the Atlantic to the other side for better opportunities. And United States was known at that time as a land of opportunity, land of plenty. Even today it is known as the land of opportunity, land of plenty. People do migrate even today. So because of this reason, the Knights of Labour did not go in for any class formation or class struggle. They didn't have that concept at all in their head.
After the Knights of Labour, there came the IWW, a politically motivated group. In opposition to the policies of the American Federation of Labour, it was founded in Chicago at a convention held in 1905 by the delegates from the Western Federation of Mines and 42 other labor organizations. The aim of the IWW was to unite in one body all skilled and unskilled workers for the purpose of overthrowing capitalism and rebuilding society on a socialistic pattern. Leaders included Eugene V. Debs, William D. Haywood, and Daniel De Leon. Its members were called the Wobblies. They had strong Marxist leanings, and they wanted to bring about a violent social revolution leading to the dictatorship of the proletariat.
They believed in Marxism. They believed in class formation and class war, class struggle. They believed in that. And they had a political agenda. That at the end of the day, they would establish communism. That at the end of the day, capitalism would end. And that they would establish dictatorship of the proletariat. It was not a social mission, nor an economic mission. It was out and out a political mission. And to achieve that kind of political revolution, they would even go for the bomb. They would go violent.
Methods used by the international workers of the world were direct action, propaganda, boycott, and strike. It was opposed to sabotage, arbitration, or collective bargaining, and also to political affiliation and intervention. Adoption of violent measures by its members, however, acted as a deterrent to widespread popularity of this organization.
They didn't get enough support from the masses of the United States. Their kind of agenda was not accepted by the American people, particularly even the laboring classes. They didn't want that the industry should close down. They wanted the industries to go on. And they wanted that there should be a bargain with the capitalists, and they should have their decent wages and decent hours of work and other privileges. But they didn't think that they should end the industry and capture the means of production themselves, establish dictatorship of the proletariat. That kind of idea was not bought up by the average Americans. They did not buy that. So therefore they didn't get mass support. This is one reason why. And political manifestos not liked the American labor as such. And particularly the Marxist manifesto was anathema to the Americans. Even today they don't like Marxist manifesto, because that serves no purpose according to them. We have to generate wealth, otherwise how can it be distribution? If you close down the possibilities of generating wealth, then there could be no fair distribution after all.
The Pullman Strike was the last one with strong ideological overtones. It began in the town of Pullman, Illinois in 1894, when approximately 3,000 employees of the Pullman Palace Car Company began a wildcat strike in response to reduction in wages, bringing traffic west of Chicago to a halt. The American Railway Union, the nation's first industry-wide union, led by Eugene V. Debs, subsequently became embroiled in what the New York Times described as a struggle between the greatest and most important labor organization and the entire railroad capital that involved some 250,000 workers in 27 states at its peak. President Grover Cleveland ordered federal troops in Chicago to end the strike, causing a debate within his own cabinet on whether the president had the constitutional authority to do so. The conflict reached its peak on the 6th of July, shortly after the troops' arrival in the city, and was resolved several days later. Civil as well as criminal charges were brought against the organizers of the strike, and Debs in particular, and the Supreme Court issued a unanimous decision in re Debs, validating Cleveland's actions. After this classical conflict between Marxism and capitalism came the great era of typically American trade unionism. The American Federation of Labor, AFL, was one of the first federations of labor unions in the United States. It was founded in Columbus, Ohio in 1886 by Samuel Gompers to replace the erstwhile Federation of Organized Trades and Labor Unions.
They believed that the industries must survive. Industries must survive, but there should be a fair share of the profit. And there should be a quality life also given to the workers. These were there. So they were basically for what they said, their economic gains. And they had their own agenda. And in that they would include reduced hours of work. They demanded 8-hour work for the worker, not more than 8 hours. It used to be 10 to 12 hours before. They wanted reduction of hours of work to 8 hours. As to wages, they thought that it should be a fair share of the profit of the capitalist. There should be a fair share of the profit. So wages should be higher, and they thought that quality of life should improve. Wages should be such as to improve the quality of life of the workers. And that would also bring in the fringe benefits. There could be good housing, good health insurance, there could be good education given free, supply of fuel like coal and other things to their family. These are called fringe benefits. They also ask for that. If you are unable to give higher money wages, give us higher wages in kind, so that together it would be a decent wage and standard of living would rise. So that was the demand. And the other demand, charter demands, included the end of exploitation of women and children's labor. All demands were social or economic in nature. There was not a single political manifesto there in the final agenda of the American Federation of Labor. Not a single item of political.
The American Federation of Labor proved to be the mainstay of the American Labor Front for quite a long time. AFL subscribed to a pragmatic approach and stayed close to the needs of the time.
The historians have always diverse opinions. They never agree. And it is said that by disagreeing, we keep up our profession. Otherwise, last book would be written and nobody would further write any books. It is because of the controversy that researches go on and professionals thrive. So here also we have many opinions, many shades of opinion.
A British historian, Henry Pelling, believes that the American labor movement was more pragmatic in nature and did not follow the vituperative European model.
In America, there's a healthy labor movement. There's no class struggle. Marxism didn't appeal to them. And they got, many a time by their collective bargaining, that trade union strategies, they got their point and they were able to achieve a better standard of life, better quality of life. And because of the continuous pressure, not only there was improvement in wages, not only improvement in hours of work, or abolition of child labor, they also got a lot of fringe benefits as a package.
Sidney Hook, in his classic book From Hegel to Marx, has put it beautifully.
Capitalism tackled socialism or Marxism by holding the horns of the bull. That means if welfare packages, socialist packages are given by the capitalists, then there will be no scope for class struggle and dictatorship of the proletariat. American capital understood that, and there are always liberal packages of reform, of benefits, including fringe benefits. That was always given. So also by socialist packages within capitalism, Marxism was ruled out.
Against this opinion of Pelling, Eric Foner, an American Marxist historian, seems to believe that in America the nature of the labor movement was characteristically reversed. Instead of being a movement from below, it took the shape of an initiative largely taken from the top, gradually trickling down.
The capitalists were very clever, or the government was very active. From the progressive era, all the presidents from Theodore Roosevelt to Franklin Delano Roosevelt, through the deal measures, the government also monitored, doctored the deal. And capitalists came out with a lot of concessions. That's why here class formation was never rigidified. Rather, the other thing happened. The laboring classes, they got bourgeoisified. So class situation was not so much rigidified, but the laboring classes got bourgeoisified.
Another American Marxist historian, William Foster, believes that the condition of the American labor was no better than that of the laborers in Europe. In fact, he analyzed it as a phenomenon of relative impoverishment.
He says, comparatively with the world, American labor could have been better off. They did not go to the position of complete struggle against class struggle against capital. There was no polarized situation of capital versus labor in America. He says that this can be conceded, but there was a sense of deprivation. Domestically, inside United States, they were worse off. He calls it relative impoverishment.
In fact, he ended his book on the note that the United States in the near future would witness a class conflagration. However, that class struggle never came and hasn't yet.